Welcome to the March to a Million podcast with Greg DuPont, founder of the Wealth Solutions Network. In this podcast, Greg shares his journey to positively impact 1 million lives by creating an army of financially minded attorneys who embrace an expanded role in their clients' lives. Greg and his guests challenge the status quo in the legal profession and the financial services industry, and show attorneys how they can improve their lives, provide greater value to their clients, and experience greater professional satisfaction. Join us in this movement and strengthen your business by learning how to solve your clients' most pressing financial problems.
Hello and welcome to another March to a Million podcast with your host, Greg DuPont. Today, we're going to talk about time. Now, Greg and I are both fiercely entrepreneurial people, and as we were preparing for the show, we were just talking about how lots of stuff doesn't happen on our own timeline, but time is an incredibly important thing for you to understand as a person who's in WSN, because there are some things that are not going to take as much time and other things that are going to take as much time or even more time than you thought. And there's some good ways to really manage that. So Greg, welcome back to the show.
Hello, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. But I do have to say that time feels like it's creeping up on me. I don't know why in God's name you scheduled this recording for so late in the day. But yeah, just it's been a time sort of day for me. I'll tell you that.
We were at the end of the day and I'm going to have to bring the energy. Is that what you're telling me, Matt?
I don't think so, brother. I think I still got more than enough for you, but you can bring a little extra. I'm sure nobody will mind. So
we will amplify each other's energy.
There you go.
As any great jazz duo does, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Figure it all out as we go, and just to be a beautiful melody. Melody.
Yes. See, you're already slowing down, dude. We're a minute and a half into the show. So, so time. Right. So let's start with this, with what's been going on with WSN over the last month. Give everybody some updates and they'll understand the relevance here.
Yeah. As we talked about, we're working on delivering WSN 2.0, and they're with delivering, that means that they're deliverables, right? The certain goals that I set coming into this summer, as we record this here now, the first week of September, things that I wanted to have, off to the printer by now, that type of stuff, right? And the reason I wanted to have this conversation today is, I was pulled away from some of that. I run my life, and one of the reasons I'm able to have an effective law practice, an effective financial advisory firm, and WSN, and an effective life is because I kind of follow the 12-week year model, but each of those 12-week years is for one of those four core areas of my business and life. And so, we're right now 3/4 of the way through the 12-month year that was the WSN year, and I was going to I've got these deliverables that I want to have done, and my other life kind of came in the way over the course of the last month. Call it August. Certain things that I had put down on my goal list to do and haven't got them done yet. And I was feeling a little bit of lower energy because of that. And so I was talking to my coach the other day, and as we talked our way through that, and the impact, of energy and perspective that I got from that, I thought to myself, this is something that's really good to talk to the WSN folk about, because one of the problems that I'm trying to fix with WSN 2.0 is what a lot of the attorneys have experienced, which is, hey, okay, this is I want to do this. I know this is transformative to my life. Let's go. Let's do it. And they get all excited and they run forward and they do it. And then they start studying for the test. And next thing we know, life comes in the way and we didn't get where we wanted to go. And, unfortunately, I've lost some good people along the way because of that. And so, I wanted to kind of talk through this a little bit because, as we reflected before we went on air, you've dealt with this type of stuff before. I deal with it all the time. And it's good to get back to the fundamentals a little bit about this. And maybe something that we talk about today might be helpful for the person that's out there that's, hey, I want to do this, but I don't think I got the time to do it. I know I know that this sounds like the right thing. I know that I'm leaving money on the table, but how do I find the time to do this?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to chat about.
Let's start with the 12-week year, because I don't know how many WSN members are familiar with that concept. Would you like to enlighten them a little bit on that philosophy and who came up with the philosophy and stuff like that?
Yeah, and I'm going to blank out on the name of the guy, the author, but that gives you the opportunity to see this is the team, so you're going to go look that up right away. But yeah, Brian Moran, yeah, and in the 12-week year, it focuses. It's a book, a great book to read. It's one of my books I reread every year. And what it focuses on is if you look at your life in 12-week blocks instead of a year, then you maintain energy throughout it. And your goals become accelerated because you're now saying, okay, I got to get this done by the end of 12 weeks, not by the end of the year. And an important predicate of the 12-week year is on the 13th week, he shall rest, that type of thing. Right? So you have a little slop time in there and you move through. So the way I implement it in my life is each of these 12 weeks is, I've got my focus and my energy is focused on X. This 12-week period was WSN 2.0. And so I don't let everything else drop, but my primary focus is on that for that 12 weeks. And by doing this over and over for the last couple of years, I've seen tremendous impacts and tremendous growth. And it gives you those wins along the way. And to kind of get where I was going and what was having my conversation with my coach was the other areas of my business. I've got some transition in my law practice, some transition in the financial advisory practice that have us bringing in new team and training new team and all that. And so that pulled away. I was not where I wanted to be with my 12-week year for WSN. So what my coaching as I walked through that was, Greg, we're all high achievers. We're trying to do so much more than the average bear. And we have to sometimes where our stomachs are bigger, our eyes are bigger than our stomach, right? We think we can get more done in 12 weeks than is reasonable. And we have to recognize sometimes the seasons change on it, and you got to be flexible in going through that. So got a lot that you might want to help me unpack on that.
Well, yes. It's interesting. One of the things that I think a lot of people look at as, I'm going to use a harsh word here, is failure, actually is, in my opinion, the exact opposite, right? So if you set these 12-week goals, right, and if you don't hit those goals for whatever reason, right, you still pushed yourself harder than you normally would. And now with self-reflection, you can understand limitations. So let's bring this into WSN, right? So one of the big steps within WSN is taking the tests. And we have one test that's a pretty easy win, and we have one test that's a little bit more of a heavy lift, right? And so, really taking a look at that and giving yourself the time and space, because attorneys are smart. I mean, you guys passed the bar, you went to law school. It's a lot, man, but you're learning a totally different language. You're learning totally different philosophy, and you're learning kind of a different mindset on how to look at the world with the 65 specifically, and or the 7, depending on where direction you're going to go. You have the easier test, which is life, health, and annuities, and then you've got the licensure test. I, Mr. Greg, have no idea who's able to take the 65 in 12 weeks, right? I mean, and so understanding our own limitations, but pushing ourselves to try to be smarter, faster, better, stronger is really what high achievers do. But we also beat ourselves up for it when we don't hit that. So what do you think about that?
That's kind of where I was at, right? As I was talking it through with my coach, I was feeling a little low energy because I was not getting where I wanted to go. And she's like, similar to what you just said. You got to give yourself some grace. And where it came down to is, as we've talked about before, I am part of Dan Sullivan's strategic coach, and part of what they train in terms of time management is free days, focus days, buffer days, and throughout the last month where I've had this transition in the office, I've protected my free days. I have protected my focus days. And as I was saying, I was feeling kind of bad because I know I could have spent the time last weekend, holiday weekend, and I could have gotten some of the stuff that I've been working on doing finished, but instead I protected my energy, protected and that's what we've got to do. That's what we have to recognize, those limitations. And because she smacked you upside the head. Said, wait a second, Greg. You're telling me that your primary goals, although you want to all these high value ads that you want to do and building all this stuff, your number one goal is family and spending time and wellness. And why should you feel bad that you chose your number one priority over that during this season where you've had to focus some of your other energy elsewhere? And so it helps to get that perspective every once in a while. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation so people can hear, again, I think of a couple of people specifically come to mind that are off to a great start in WSN and really were going forward. And then they hit a wall. Life got in the way one way or the other, and they weren't able to get to the licensing test. Next thing they know, it's a few months down the road, and I'm not going to continue moving forward. I can't figure this out. And a good friend of mine once told me that when you've got time problems like this, it always comes down to a scheduling problem. And some of your practices that you're following on a week-to-week basis, prioritizing what you're doing. It's so easy in a business like yours, business like mine, business like the listeners, to just be down in the dirt of it, dealing with day-to-day stuff. And then you pull yourself up, and next thing you know, August is gone. And if you take more time to be mindful, and that's what she pointed out to me, that, okay, I was being mindful. I just had different value judgments in the moment than my goal was. And that's part of the 12-week year. So, I know now that, okay, I can recalibrate, and I still got 3 weeks because I got a week off on vacation to get where I want to go for my 12 weeks. And that's part of the discipline of that 12-week year.
Well, I also think there's an enormous amount of slippage that people don't pay attention to, which is frustrating, right? When I was a coach and a consultant for financial advisors, one of the first things that I would do is a time survey, and we get done with the time survey, and the advisor was working 20 hours a week on the things that they should be doing, right? And so that means another 20 hours or more, was slippage. And I think we need to pay very close attention to that. But I want to focus on grace there and limitations. Those are two really interesting words that you chose that I want the listeners to understand your thinking surrounding. So in my opinion, there's only one way to understand limitations, and that is to push those limits to really see what your breaking point is. How do you manage that as a person who's actively involved in coaching programs, both personally, professionally, spiritually, and, really physically, right? You are constantly pushing the limits on all of that. When do you decide, and how do you decide when grace needs to be applied?
Not well enough.
You and me both, brother. I was hoping you'd say that, but I had to ask.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I had the outside perspective of my coach that was able to kind of spin that around on me and say, wait a second, you made these deliberate decisions as to this, which were value-based decisions. So you may not be going where you want to go right now, but you were aligned with your higher vision of what you're doing. And so, once my eyes opened up on that, it was no longer something that was taking my energy away. And that's what we as entrepreneurs, we've got to protect that. And that's one of the things that Dan Sullivan talks about all the time, protecting your energy. And if we don't give ourselves grace, then we just dwell on it and it pulls us down. Now, the defining line that I had to come to in my conversation with my coach was, was it a reasonable, nuanced decision? Or was it, as you were pointing out, essentially time being pissed away, which happens on a day-to-day basis? When I look at my calendar is time blocked on our, just about 95% of the day is time blocked, and it's not on my calendar. It doesn't get done, which frustrates part of my team. Like, well, if you need something, put it on my calendar. But if not, I got to do what's on the calendar. And my weekend routine is to fill out the calendar. These are the major things that need to be done this week. And if we get those ones done, then we're heading to where we need to go.
I think time blocking, and I like Sullivan's, work week, and again, the 12-week year I think is fantastic. But I also think that a lot of times we're our own worst enemies, right? When it comes to being hypercritical on ourselves, because most of us are really the drivers, the listeners of this, or the drivers of their business, right? If a buck stops with us, and we know that. And so it's difficult for many people to go ahead and give themselves the grace that they need in order to truly achieve real greatness, right? So I also believe that if it's not on my calendar, I don't do it. And if there's space on my calendar, here's the thing: I take the time. And I don't think a lot of people think that they just have to be sitting at their desk and be busy and busy and busy because of, well, that's how a lot of us are wired. But I also think taking downtime and giving yourself space and breath, maybe to watch a music video or a TED Talk, or just to decompress, play a game on your phone just to kind of reset. I think is something that actually I learned from the world of having ADHD, that it's called switching, right? Going from one task to another. In order to be successful with how my brain works, I have to give a little bit of space between that. And as I'm saying this, the listeners might resonate, and this might resonate with you. So for instance, like I'm doing a podcast with you right now, but right before this, I had a sales call. And so going from a sales call to a podcast is a very different mindset for me, Matt Halloran. And so I had to take time to switch. When we just go from one task to another, to another, to another, in my experience, that can actually reduce your efficacy, your efficiency, and the quality, because you're not giving yourself that space. Is that something that you deal with, or do you think your listeners deal with that too?
I did some coaching a couple of years ago with a performance specialist that was an executive performance specialist, and very much aligned with what you said. The coaching was, do work blocks and then a breather. You can't just, your work product, your performance decreases markedly if you just try to keep grinding it out. Mm-hmm. And so for myself, there are points throughout the day where I just do some meditation, 10-minute meditation here and there to recenter, refresh, and go on. And as also part of the coaching with my reflection of the last month is I found myself, part of my problem was with these changes in personnel, I had to get down into the weeds on more administrative tasks that drain my energy, mm-hmm. as opposed to things like this that, we were yawning when we started, but now we both got just a good amount of energy. We'll crap out at the end, but
I'm sure
the things that we do where we're in that mode, where we're tapping into that ability of ours, mm-hmm. That actually starts creating energy in a virtuous cycle, as opposed to the draining cycle.
Well, so let's being an owner of a Canadian company, everybody on my team, I'm not Canadian, but they all are. And so they're always talking about hockey, right? Dude, they do like 3-minute shifts, dude, right? I mean, do you look at professional athletes, professional basketball, professional football players? Why do we think we're any different, right? And that's one of the things that I like to challenge people who are professionals all the time is number one, every professional has a coach, more than one usually, right? You look at somebody like, I'll just use LeBron James as an example. They've got a shooting coach, they've got a plays coach, they've got a PR coach, they've got a nutrition coach, right? They've got all of these people because they want to keep LeBron James at peak performance. But a lot of people in WSN members are probably not, barred from this, is they're not doing all of the things that they need to do to perform at a peak level. And part of that is rest. Part of that is space. Part of that is meditation. One of my favorite things in the whole wide world that I learned in the last couple of years is floor time. Right. And so there's been really big studies that show, so you're meditating, right? So what I do is it's a sort of meditation, but I literally lay down on the floor in my office. My hands are crossed over my chest, and all I'm doing is breathing, right? I'm just recentering myself, resetting myself, refocusing myself, making sure that when I get up, whatever that next thing is, man, I'm ready to go. This is why when we used to work in offices, which I know you still have an office, but taking those coffee breaks. In fact, there was a study. This is a terrible study I'm going to reference, but it was true. Smokers were more productive because they took breaks.
And get the nicotine fix.
Well, I'm sure that probably didn't hurt, but they actually studied this sociologically that said that the people who actually take those forced breaks or addiction-based breaks were more productive when they sat down and got their work done than the people who literally just sat there and stared at their screen. We have to give ourselves grace. So let's bring this all the way back around to the original component, which is Greg wanted to get a bunch of stuff done in August, didn't get all of those things done. What are some of the things that the WSN members can now see now that you know what you still need to get done? Because remember, these are evergreen podcasts. Somebody might be listening to this, 3 years from now and go back and say, man, I can't believe Greg was stressed out about that because I know what he built and it's a great part of the system. So what are some of the things that are coming down the pipeline with WSN 2.0?
So we got so many things that are brewing out there, and that's part of the challenge, right? Taking the learnings from the first iteration and developing point of sale stuff for people to use, trying to find ways to solve the problem of a vast amount of knowledge that is involved in financial planning. And a base in WSN of people that are information seekers, that we want to be able to recraft their approach so that they understand that their job, as we talked about with Ari in our last episode, their job is to create connection and create and have that bond of trust. Find out what problems are out there that the client wants solved now. And so we have to find ways to sometimes make people aware of what those problems are, because they don't know. That's the big problem that we're dealing with as a society, is that the clients that are out there that have their money saved for retirement, they got gnawing problems. They feel things are out of whack. But they're not sure how to articulate what's causing this, or to make proper value judgments as to what changes need to be made. And so the challenge of 2.0 is, how do we communicate to the attorneys the problems in such a fashion that they can now calculate, the clients can now calculate what the ramifications are, and realize that these are things that they want to change. And so I've been working on content for point of sale use, so that it's easier for the attorneys. The conversation with Ari last episode is part of the sales, quote unquote, I hate to use that word even, but that's what's going to connect, approach. How do people need to approach people so that they don't get caught in the old slimy sales routine, but rather really find out the truth of the people's condition, what their concerns are, and whether or not we can help them. And then all of the background stuff on that. And then in addition to all that, we've got new lead gen stuff that we are developing for the WSN members so that they can make their value more apparent to people through marketing. That was a lot to try to put into 12 weeks.
Yeah. Well, you definitely found your limits on that, brother. That's good. Right. And so, your next 12-week year, when it comes to WSN, you're going to be able to go back and you're going to be able to reassess and what you were able to get done, what you really like to get done, and also what's the most valuable to the members, right? You and I both know that the only way that we're really going to truly provide great service to our clients is to provide something and see how they like it, right? See if it works, because, it can be the greatest ideas in our mind, but until it gets into practice, which is one of the reasons why I think WSN is such a good system, because you're already doing this within your firm, right? The test kitchen is there. The proof kitchen is what my partner likes to call it. What we do here at Proudmouth is we're the proof kitchen, right? We already know this stuff works because we do it for ourselves. Then it works because you do it for yourself. So closing thoughts on time. When you're thinking back on this episode or thinking about this episode in the future, there's one thing that you want everybody to remember about time. What would it be?
Well, you touched on it with coaching. Okay. I was at a presentation a little while ago that was played a video from Kobe Bryant about his history. And the amount of time that he spent focusing on fundamentals and how those fundamentals are what he believed separated him from everybody else. And that was what my coaching session had to bring me back to, some of my fundamentals on time management. And as I was thinking about having this conversation today, I'm like, well, everybody's done stuff about time management and all that. And that's partly true, that everybody is invested in calendars and to-dos and things like this and thinks about it. But it's something that we have to get back to on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, those fundamentals of asking yourself the question, am I controlling my time, or is my time controlling me? And if we can ask ourselves that question on a day-to-day basis, then if we've got goals, we'll get there. So in the context of WSN, I know every attorney that comes into this program that sets aside the time to get licensed. It doesn't take a whole lot of time in bulk, but it takes a commitment. And if we can ask ourselves, do I have half an hour a day to do this? Just little nibbles here and there. Then you can get through this. And if you lose a week, if this is a priority for you, you get back on the wagon and you spend a half hour. And see, my problem was I was looking for large blocks of time to be creative. And when you're creative, you do need time, blocks of time to be creative. And you don't need blocks of time to do something like learn the basics of insurance to take a test. As long as you go back to your fundamentals. Am I controlling my time, or is my time controlling me?
And I'm going to leave everybody with going back to Kobe Bryant. So part of controlling your time, part of being successful, is practicing what you already do. Kobe Bryant didn't need to dribble another ball in his life or shoot another ball or sprint down the court. He had done that hundreds of thousands of times probably, but he did it anyway because he knew it would make him a better player. When is the last time you practiced being an attorney? When is the last time that you practiced a client meeting? When is the last time that you practiced any aspect of your job, being a good manager, providing feedback, providing praise? When is the last time that you did those things? Those things are things you need to build into your calendar. And time, that's time well spent, right? It really is time well spent. And I think a lot of times that we as professionals just forget what it took for us to get here, and what got us here isn't going to get us there. but some of the components of what got us here are things that you should be doing on a regular basis. So if you want to know more about WSN, go to joinwsn.com. If time is something that you're concerned about, get a freaking coach. Sit down with somebody who can truly help you manage your day better, more successfully, which is what coaches do, especially professional. And you had said, like an executive coach or a performance coach. Those are the sorts of things that you need to Google. And guess what? You've got a great person in Greg. You can ask who he's used in the past because we know that they're good, or he wouldn't be where he's at. So for Greg, this is Matt Haller, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Thank you for listening to the March to a Million podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available, and get in touch with our team by visiting our website at www.wealthsolutionsgroup.biz, or give us a call at 614-432-8065. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Wealth Solutions Network. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice from qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have.